Great. Sorry, I'm choked up already. Thank you, Dan, and thank everybody for taking the time, carving the time out of this very chilly Wednesday to join us here. Thank you to Christina Casterline too, my partner in crime. She's going to help me monitor the chat a little bit. Christina and I have actually been doing ACEs presentations for, I think we figured out, over 8 years now, and have done a lot of the trainings. Just so you know, the original Building Strong Brains and ACEs presentation is about 3 hours long. You're not doing that today. You're welcome. But this is kind of more of an overview. So, and I like it interactive. So if you, a lot of times I'm going to ask you to drop something in the chat. So if you don't mind to drop in the chat, I know DCS has the ACEs training, like when you're onboarding. So how long has it been since you've had any type of ACEs presentation or ACEs training? And then did you ever in that time do any updates, any additional trainings? So if you could drop that in the chat, that would be a great place to start. Oh, no training, Valerie. Okay. Good. Well, thank you. I know I was talking to somebody who's on here, and I don't think she can get to her chat, but she did it 11 years ago and never did any updating since then. And the reason I asked you, because I wanted to know kind of after your first ACEs training, what were your takeaways? Was there anything that stood out to you and how it changed how you approached your job? And then something we'll talk about a little while later is, did it even change how you approach your trips to Walmart? So if you have any of those insights, feel free to drop them in the chat. Oh, no trainings. Okay. So today's goal is, again, with the understanding that most of everybody's had the longer ACEs training, we're going to go over some of the brain architecture and how a healthy brain is developed, what ACEs are, those adverse childhood experiences, and how they affect brain development. And then we're going to talk about more conversationally about how to utilize this information in prevention work. And when we're talking about prevention work, really what we're looking at is how to keep children with the families and keep the families together and not coming into custody. So why is this important? So we're going to start with healthy child development. Drop in the chat, let me know if you have any children of your own and how old they are right now. And while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you about my two kids. I've got a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old. Kat's got two 3-year-olds, Christina, 31-year-old. So Christina and I are on the same page. We have Shauna, 6, 4, and 1. That's a handful, sweet one. So why do we care about healthy child development? Well, my kids are both graduated. They're on their own. And when they were little, the goal was to parent with the end in mind. So sometimes I'd make decisions and thoughts that I had to do or train them or teach them things so that they would become productive members of society. So we want educational achievement. Both of my children are now gainfully employed and blessings off my payroll, which is what I love the most. So they're producing economically. Both of them ended up voting in this last election. To be fair, they probably canceled each other out, but we won't get into that. But they did their citizenship role and voted. And we're going to get talking a lot more about lifelong health. And then one day, my hope when I parented with the end in mind and goal is that they will be able to parent my grandchildren. And then I can just spoil them and send them home, right? I remember doing this presentation for a group of retired engineers from the Oak Ridge National Lab. And it was kind of funny because they're like, why are we here learning about healthy child development? Well, it was because their grandchildren were growing up in the same community. And for them, they wanted that healthy economy and those strong communities for their grandchildren to grow up in. So how are brains built? Has anyone, drop in the chat, and I know there's one person on here that's going to answer yes, but have any of you actually built a house from the ground up? And if so, or even if you haven't, tell me what you need to start with when you're building a house from the ground up. No, Crystal, a dollhouse does not count. Okay, Catherine has, Shauna has. Yes, you need a good, strong foundation. Thank you guys for jumping in there with that. Have y'all ever seen a house that doesn't have a good, strong foundation? And if so, how did you know that you were looking at a house without a good, strong foundation? What are some of those clues? It's leaning. That's right, Shauna. Maybe some cracks in the drywall. I watched a video one time of a guy that went shopping, not shopping, but house hunting. And he took a golf ball to every house that they looked at and put it on the floor. And if it rolled over to one of the sides, then he knew that they didn't have a good, strong foundation in the house because it was leaning. So just like you have to start with a good, strong foundation with our house, you need to do that with our brain architecture. Cracks at the ceiling, right, Valerie? And just like when you're building a house, you don't want to do it all by yourself. You can't do it all by yourself. I personally do not want the same guy that laid my electricity to be running my water pipes. I'm just funny that way. And then drywall is like an art form in and of itself. So it takes a village to build a house. And I think we call them subcontractors. But it takes a village to raise our children as well. And even though the foundation might end up cracked or something, there might be problems, they're fixable, just like with the families that we get to work with. They're fixable, but it's a lot cheaper and stronger if we get it right the first time. So while we're talking about these things, don't just think about the children that we come encounter in our work, but think about their parents and maybe even their grandparents as well. So a lot of the things we're going to talk about today have affected the parents and maybe even the grandparents, and you're going to see that in the intergenerational piece. All right, when a baby is born, so the Center for the Developing Child at Harvard, when Christine and I first started doing this a couple years ago, this slide looked a little bit different because it said more than 1,000 new neural connections per second were formed. Well, Harvard came back and says, whoops, we made a mistake. It's actually 1 million neural connections per second. So when you see a baby sleeping all the time and interacting all the time, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of growing and developing that happens for that child. And we're going to talk about how these neuro connections get formed. But I love this slide because it really is a good visual for how much activity is going on inside the baby's brains in the first 2 or 3 years. So when I say serve and return, tell me what you think of. Drop it in the chat with just the phrase serve and return. Tennis, right. Things like tennis and ping pong and volleyball, all those kind of things. Well, it's the same type of interactions with our child, that serve and return that we're looking at, that helps build those neural connections. So it could look like babbling, when the baby babbles at you or cries and lets you know something is wrong, or smiling at you. How many of us go to the grocery store and a baby smiles at you? If the baby smiles at you, what are you automatically going to do? You're going to smile right back at him, right? Or across the apple aisle, across the big pile of apples, a baby might look at you and go, hi. Well, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to go hi right back to the baby. That is the serve and return interaction that is vital to build those good, strong neuro connections and building those attachments. So it's those quality relationships, security and trust. Good. Thank you, Christina. So how this works on the regular basis is the baby has a need. Maybe the diaper needs to be changed and the baby cries. The caregiver comes and meets that need, changes the diaper, or maybe the baby's hungry, so the child gets fed or whatever. They figure out what the problem is. And that's how that baby knows, I can trust you. I can trust you that if I cry, you're going to come figure out what I need. So that is how trust develops. Now, again, think about the families that we get to work with. Is that always how it works? It's not. Sometimes you have the trauma cycle. So if the baby has the need and the cries, but nobody is there to consistently meet that need, the baby doesn't trust that if I cry, something will happen to take care of me. Now, when I heard this one presentation a while back, I kept thinking about the fact that I am always rupture and repair. That's right. I'm I was thinking about all my great mommy fails. How many mommy fails do we have? Some of us, it feels like on a daily basis. Talking to a friend of mine this morning, she's like, well, it was just a normal mommy fail kind of morning. But this doesn't have to be every single time. I think the statistic, and don't quote me on it, was like 1 in 7, as long as we get it right, 1 in 7 times the baby will learn to trust us. Of course, more trust is developed as the needs are met on a consistent basis. But just like with us, we're not perfect parents, and our families aren't perfect parents, but it's not a one and done. It's not that mistrust is not going to develop because the caregiver doesn't meet the needs once or twice. It's consistent and never getting met. Any questions so far on how to develop a strong, healthy brain? Drop it in the chat if you have questions, because now is a good time for that, because we're going to move on to, yes, Teresa, you can either drop in the chat or unmute.
I can't type in chat. I know that's not the question you're looking for, but I see everybody's chat, but I can't type. It's not available.
Oh. I'm
going to let it says it's only available during the meeting, and I'm like, okay.
All right, I'm going to let Dan kind of work that out with you.
Okay.
Because that's well beyond my area of expertise. But thank you for letting me know that.
Okay.
Thanks, Jill. I'll work on that behind the scenes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dan. Teresa, if you don't mind to unmute while Dan works on that with you, or mute, that'd be great.
Okay.
So next we're going to look at toxic stress and how it disrupts the brain development that we just talked about. So there's different kinds of stress. A positive stress, and all of them kind of work the same in the body itself. How many of y'all have ever driven through Nashville? What happens to your body when you're driving through that crazy Nashville traffic? Your heart rate speeds up, your breathing gets changed, your adrenaline kicks in, tense up. Yeah. Christina, I have to laugh. Christina said tensed up, and she actually lives in Nashville. So this is more of a daily basis for her. But I don't, totally stress. Absolutely, Vanessa. Because Nashville traffic is rough, y'all. And I'm terrified every time I do it. So my body tenses up, that adrenaline kicks in, those cortisol hormones, kick in, and there's a lot going on. So if you look at your body's response, so all that stuff peaks, your breathing changes, you couldn't even instant regret. You can't even, your body doesn't see the need for you to make spit, and your digestive tract changes, all because it's that fight or flight that's happening when you're driving through Nashville. About the same as if a bear walked in the door is how I feel when I'm driving through Nashville. But positive stress, again, the body's reacting the same on all of these, but there's different types of stress. Positive stress are those events like meeting new people, or when our kiddos start school for the first time. When I remember taking my kids to school and they would like hide behind my leg, right? Well, by the time they're in 5th grade, they're not hiding behind my leg. I was lucky to get a bye, mom, see you later, because they learned how to do that. So they may have been nervous going into a new classroom per se, but they had learned and they knew what to do. So that's really how that's supposed to work, and that's good. Tolerable stress is actually it feels like the world I'm living in right now. It's unavoidable events that are like a natural disaster, losing a loved one, health issues, that kind of stuff. Same thing with our with our body. Our body's response is going to be the same. Our cortisol level is going to shoot up, that kind of stuff. I remember when I lost my father a couple of years ago, and all this happened, and it was terrible. We've all been there. We've all lost somebody, but then it comes back down. And then every once in a while, something will happen, or I'll smell something or see something that reminds me of my dad, and it shoots back up. It's not as high, but it still goes up, and then it comes back down. So that tolerable stress, again, the body reacts the same, and it might take longer for it to go back down, but it still does. And what I love about this middle picture, if y'all can see these people helping our friend up during that rough time. Right now, things are going really crazy in my world with my mom's health and my father-in-law's health and yada, yada. But I've got so many great people in my world that are texting me and checking on me. How you doing? How can we help? That kind of stuff. So as long, if it's unavoidable, but if you've got the people there to help you through it, it doesn't do the lasting damage to the brain and the body. So the problem, and something that we see a lot in our world with DCS, is this toxic stress. Now notice the words here. It's ongoing, repeated exposure to things like abuse or neglect that's bad for the brain development. Again, I want you to think about the parents and maybe even the grandparents that you interact with. Yeah, Christina, social supports is one of the protective factors for sure. And if you don't have those social or family supports, it can make turn something like that into the toxic stress. So again, think about the parents and the grandparents that we interact with on a daily basis, not just the children, but the entire family, in this intergenerational trauma that we've talked about. So what it does to the body is the hormones go up, stress, the cortisol, the adrenaline, all those things, but it never really goes back down. And that's when it starts doing a lot of damage to the physical body, that your body was never made to stay at that heightened sense of alert. So just like if the bear walked in, just imagine if you know the bear's going to walk in every day and you never know what that's going to look like in your world or how that's going to turn out, what kind of mood the bear's in, right? I left this slide in because I really think it's a good visual of how a healthy brain and an abused brain look side by side. We can go into all the different lobes, and this is the survival part. That's why it's lit up here. But this is what a healthy brain looks like, and it develops from the back going forward to that prefrontal cortex. And you can see in this healthy brain how well that piece is lit up. Versus this scan was from an abused child in a Romanian orphanage. So this child never had that serve and return interaction. From my understanding, it was like a big gymnasium filled with a bunch of cribs. And the children may have gotten fed and their diaper changed from time to time, but there was none of that serve and return. There was no interaction. There was no loving on these babies. They just weren't capable of it. And that's how you can see the actual damage to the brain in these scans. Again, not saying this abused brain can never be fixed. Fixed might not be the right word, but improved upon. But it'll probably never light up like the one that's had the good foundation from the very beginning. This is a good little video that's just as kind of a recap. All right. Any questions so far on that, or is it making good sense? And while you're putting any questions in the chat, I will tell you that back in our old house when my son was growing up, we had a neighbor child who had a lot of adverse childhood experiences that we'll talk about in just a minute. All right, good. I think we're making sense. And he would come over, and they would play. Literally, they'd play frisbee or football in the front yard, and he would say, "Can I be done building his brain now?" I'm like, "Yes, you can be done building his brain now." And we would send him home. So, okay, since I don't see any questions and everybody seems to think it's making sense, then we will move on to what are actually adverse childhood experiences. So again, this is the pared down version. I can tell you all about when this survey came out, who did it, the sample size. I will tell you about the sample of who was in this study. Were mostly white, mostly educated, all employed because they had health insurance. So it's not really a very good cross section of the country. And I'm just going to leave it at there. If you want to hear me get on a soapbox, you are welcome to call me afterwards. So these are the things that they looked at. Kaiser Permanente was the insurance company, and they asked 18,000 people, did this happen to you before the age of 18? So we're looking at physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect. And then when it comes to the household dysfunction, the question was, did this happen in your home before the age of 18? So was there anyone in your home with a mental illness before you were 18? Before you were 18, was any relative incarcerated? So you understand that this was looking at the entire household. And what they discovered was there were 10 things that they looked at. And the higher the number of ACE scores, or the number of times they could say yes, had a graded dose response relationship to many health outcomes. So basically the higher the health outcomes, or the higher the ACE score, the less likely you were to have good healthy outcomes. And I think it's 6 or 7 or more. If you said yes to 6 or 7 or more, then you were more likely to have a 20-year lifespan decrease. You were more likely to die 20 years earlier than someone the same age without them. And what they're looking at is general health. So you look at obesity, diabetes, depression, suicide attempts, these kinds of things. And when they first said, "Hey, Jill, congratulations, you're going to learn how your mom's alcoholism might lead to your cancer," I'm like, whoa, wait, that doesn't even make any sense. But if you think back to the slide that we were on about the adrenaline and the cortisol and how that affected the body and the damage that could do to the body when it's heightened and stays that way, it does make sense. And it does a lot of damage to the internal organs. It also looks at behavior. So they may not have been raised, if you're raised with a lot of ACEs, you're certainly not raised learning positive coping skills. So when I come home from a rough day, I know that I have choices. I can choose to go for a walk. I can choose that cookie. I can choose that glass of wine. I can choose a lot of different ways to cope. Some of them are healthy. Some of them are obviously not. So the families that we get to work with may not have even learned about what a healthy coping skill looks like. They grew up with smoking and alcoholism and drug use. So that's going to probably be more of what they turn to, because that's what they grew up with. I will tell you that I mentioned that it was not a really good cross section of the general population. So they've changed a few things: witnessing violence, unsafe neighborhood, racism, foster care, and bullying. And I think the one that they asked about divorce, they've changed that to were you brought up in a single family home, because a lot in this one, the expansion was in Philadelphia. A lot of the families, they didn't experience divorce because their parents were never married in the first place. So they're taking a more inclusive view of the questionnaire. So I'm excited about that. I've got a lot of slides that I'm not showing you based on the Tennessee data and the national data. Again, how they got them, I don't necessarily agree with, but if you want to hear more about that, just let me know. So now that I've thoroughly depressed you on how toxic stress can interfere with healthy brain development and what ACEs are, now we're going to talk about the resilience piece. And this is the piece that really makes me happy. This was actually added to the Building Strong Brains slideshows later, because you can't have one without the other. Why are you learning about ACEs if you don't think there's anything you can do about them? So let's talk about resilience. And I love this piece too, because this is where we get to come in. This is where the teachers come in. This is where the daycare providers come in. We are building that strong community for our children. And you can see why I love that part. That is us. We are building those strong communities. So as DCS frontline professionals, we get to come in and interact with the family, find out what their strengths already are. They've got to have some. They are the experts of their family. They know what works and they know what doesn't. How can we help them build up? How can we help them build up those protective factors, those social supports? What do they need to help have a strong, healthy family? Every child needs a safe, stable, nurturing environment, and we get the pleasure and the honor of going in and helping them ensure that happens. Again, think about this with the parents and potentially the grandparents that are raising the children we get to interact with. Where is their fulcrum? How can we help support them as well, so they can in turn help support their children? Kat says she likes that the fulcrum isn't fixed. It's really, really, really great news. We can talk more about brain plasticity, how there's a lot of it in early childhood, as well as a bump in it in adolescence, like the video said. That's why they say early childhood is the best time to teach your child a second language because they can learn more and there's that brain plasticity. So that's why I could never figure out French in high school because I was way past that, I guess. So yeah, this part is exciting to me. Any questions on resilience? So the whole point of building strong brains and the ACEs conversation and the reason that we're trying to spread this across the state of Tennessee is to switch the conversation from what's wrong with you to what's happened to you. And this is when we come back to the Walmart comment from the very beginning. I used to go into Walmart, and I'll tell you, I'm going to be the first to admit that I can be very judgmental at times. You can look at somebody at Walmart and go, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with you?" And don't tell me you haven't done it too. There's a whole website of people of Walmart, right? And now I'm able to think more to myself, well, I wonder what's happened to get them to this point. My daughter, when she was in high school, and again, we've talked about this a lot at our house, the building strong brains and ACEs and stuff. And my daughter's really sarcastic, and I'm pretty sure I know where that comes from. But anyway, so one day she came home from school and said, "Mom, you would never believe that so-and-so was sleeping in class." Now, normally she would have left it at that. It's like, "Oh, I can't believe so-and-so was sleeping in class." Well, after learning about ACEs and that kind of stuff, she came home and changed the sentence to, "I wonder what happened last night for her to be sleeping through class today." So do you see how that switches not just the conversation, but how your mindset is? So remember that next time you're at Walmart and you want to say, "What's wrong with you?" And instead, ACEs is, oh, good call, Jill. So yeah, for when we're looking at the fasts, when we're doing fasts, it's a good idea to put on there any ACEs that you might learn about the family. Good, good, good. So drop in the chat, or if you need to come off mute, that's fine too. So now we're going to talk about how does this work with the prevention work. And again, remember, we're trying to keep children out of state's custody. The state can do a lot of things well. Raising children is not one of them, and we all know that. So how do you think knowing about ACEs has affected or can affect your work with the families that you get to work with? Oops, sorry, I did not mean to do that. Help meet their needs. Might help identify some of the needs as well. So just like Jill was talking about for the fast, knowing about some of these can help identify the needs that you can put in the fast and then therefore turn around and add it to the care plan, make those referrals. More compassionate, helps you know where the parents and caregivers are at, for sure. And I know you do see intergenerational trauma, but how do you see that affecting the families that you work with? Less judgment, more empathy. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. Meet them where they are in life. Vanessa, good. Thank you. Often do you see families that you don't see this intergenerational trauma affecting what's going on when you get there? Does that happen very often? Sorry. Vicious cycle, Jill. Yeah. Environment impacts their lives. Yeah. And we talked about it in the presentation about the 5 protective factors. And if you didn't get to see that, you can check it out on our website, and I'll have that up in a little bit. It was recorded. But we talked a little bit about this, that they may know the way they were raised is not the best way, but they may not know a better way. They may not know any different. So how can we help them understand their options that they have for raising healthy children? So this one, I want everybody to drop in the chat, especially if you can. How familiar do you think you are in finding resources in your county or your region for families to help them with their past traumas? Again, we're not just looking at the children, but you can answer for that too. But for the parents or maybe even the grandparents, how familiar do you think you are in finding those resources? Adrian, 8 out of 10. Stephanie's becoming, Vanessa's very familiar. More resources than we're aware of. Health counselors are a great place. Good. Average, but sometimes it's a struggle. It sure is. Henry County CASA trainer provided a great list of resources. Great, Valerie. Sorry. So if you are not currently involved in your community advisory boards, or if you don't have one, maybe talk to your resource linkage person about where are they happening? Maybe how can you get them started, help get them started again? A lot of resources do change a lot, and it's hard to stay on top of it, but CABs are a good way to do that. Health councils are a good way to do that. Your resource linkage person is out there for sure with the resources. And don't forget about us. We are your prevention consultants. You're welcome to reach out to us. That website that Christina put up there earlier, you can find the contact person for your area. We're very happy to help you find any resources. And sometimes it takes knowing who that community champion is. Every county, every community that I've ever been in, there is at least one person that I can find who knows who to call. You know, there might be a Bob at First Baptist who knows a guy who can help repair the stairs, or might know of just the right counselor or therapist to help with this family. So ask. We're happy to help. Your resource linkage person. Learning new stuff every day, and we attend CABS monthly. Good. That makes me so happy, Marcia. Thank you for sharing that. And CABS are a lot of fun. There's great people there. Oh, Tracy, yeah, Community Compass is a site, and so that some regions are already in your care portal. If you don't know about that, look at our website. I think that information is out there as well, and if it's not, it should be, and we'll fix that. When you're working with families as DCS frontline professionals, it's important not just to find out about their ACE score, but to help them understand the brain science behind it. Helping them understand that they are responsible for building their child's brain, that it doesn't just magically happen. And that's going to help stop the intergenerational trauma. So if you do have that conversation with the parents and find out what their ACE score is, don't just say, oh, you're a 7 and walk off. You've just made them realize or relive some of their past trauma. So be prepared to have resources available if you do have that conversation with them, so that you're able to help support them, again, build up those protective factors, help them deal with the trauma. I saw a video not too long ago about, and it had a waste paper basket, and it was full of crinkled up paper. And those represented the past trauma. And it said, we're not going to get rid of the past trauma, but the paper basket was overflowing with these but she took out one with the crinkled up piece of paper and laid it out, and then it was easier to deal with. So you look at one trauma and you flatten it out, and then you pull out another one and you look at it. And that's what the therapy could help do for these families, is look at one at a time, so there's more space for them to have good, productive lives. It was a better visual, I think, than what I just explained, but it was really good. And one thing that we were talking about running through this is, as frontline professionals, you want to be aware of your own experiences, your own emotions, your own feelings, and how they could possibly impact your work with your families. If you're having a rough day, if you're something has happened to maybe trigger you, make sure you deal with it, and make sure you take care of yourself as well, so you can be there to support and help care for your families. Like I said before, this is like really a 3-hour presentation, and I just hit the tip of the iceberg. So if you want more information, the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth website is a fabulous place to go. You can just type in TCCY in Google and it'll pop up, and then you can navigate the videos that I played are on here, as well as some other really, really, really good ones. You can even share this with your families if you think they're ready, and let them help learn about how they're helping their children's brains develop. Does anybody have any questions, comments? I'm even open to snide remarks, to be honest with you, about all the information that we've talked about and how this affects your work in prevention. You can give me a thumbs up if you're good to go. You can add questions into the chat. You can unmute if you'd like to. Thank you, Erin. Ooh, Erin gave me a double thumbs up. I don't know if she meant to do that, but I'm going to take it like you did. Great. Okay. Thank you, guys. And again, if you have any questions afterwards, I'm usually really bad about thinking of questions after a presentation or after I've talked to somebody. You're certainly welcome to reach out to me. So to follow up with the adverse childhood experiences, Christina Casterline, in February, is going to have understanding positive childhood experiences in prevention work. So we certainly invite you to come to this training. There is a QR code here, and Christina put in the chat our website, so you can register either direction. We'd love to see you there. I know it's in 2 weeks, but we wanted to keep them close together to build on each other. So we'd love to have you come to that one as well. Tell your friends. Here's another QR code that you can scan. It lets you see our upcoming trainings. And like today, we're recording this one, so this will be uploaded soon. So we've got protective factors, we've got who we are, we've got, I think, PCIT. We've got a lot of really fabulous information on there. Pretty sure Dan might have to correct me, but it counts towards your hours as well. So just pop on there and see what all we've got.
Yeah, that should count towards your training hours.
Okay, great. And Dan, this is my last slide. So if you want to, do you want me to stop sharing and you can put up the one for the
It's just
survey?
a link I'll put in the chat box. If anyone here does not have access to copy or click on that chat box, let me know. I can email it to you as well. But I'm going to put that in there now. The last thing you need to do before you leave is click this link, and it's a double purposed link. You are gonna, it's a way that we can give you training credit as well as you can evaluate the what you received today. So please click on that link up there and complete that before you go.